There's a certain comfort in believing that evil is something separate from us, that it lives out there, somewhere else, in the shadows of history, in the minds of monsters, in the pages of headlines that detail horrors too vast to comprehend. We like to think that evil wears a mask, that it looks a certain way, acts a certain way, distant, foreign, obvious. But what if evil was quieter, more familiar? What if it wore your neighbor's smile, stood politely in line, paid its taxes and said please and thank you? What if, under the right conditions, even the kindest among us were capable of unspeakable things? Now, imagine standing at the edge of a mirror, not an ordinary mirror, but one that reflects not just your face, but the hidden contours of your soul. What would you see? The person you recognize, the one who laughs, loves, helps strangers, believes in goodness? Or would there be something else lurking just beneath, a shadowy twin waiting in the silence? This is the unsettling truth psychology has uncovered. Evil is not the domain of monsters. It is a potential that lives within all of us. The line between good and dark is not a wall, but a whisper. And under the right conditions, ordinary people, kind people, moral people can cross it without even realizing they've moved. Let me take you back to 1961, to a modest lab at Yale University. The air is sterile, the walls unremarkable. A psychologist named Stanley Milgram is about to conduct an experiment that will shatter our understanding of human nature. The setup is simple. A participant is told they are helping in a study on memory. They are given the role of teacher, and across from them sits a learner, a man strapped to a chair with electrodes. The scientist, dressed in a white lab coat, instructs the teacher to administer electric shocks every time the learner makes a mistake. The shocks start small, 15 volts, a light tap. But with each error, the voltage climbs, 75 volts, 150. The learner begins to groan in pain. At 300 volts, he screams, begs to be released. The teacher hesitates, looks to the scientist who calmly says, "The experiment requires that you continue." Here is where the horror unfolds. The teachers, ordinary people, fathers, shopkeepers, teachers, do not stop. Even as the learner falls silent, possibly dead, they keep pressing the shock button because an authority figure told them to. 65% of participants delivered what they believed were lethal shocks, all while their hands shook, their voices cracked with distress. But they did it. What does this tell us? That obedience is a drug more potent than morality. That the human mind, when placed in the grip of authority, will contort itself to justify the unthinkable. The participants were not sadists. They were you and me, people who would never dream of hurting another. And yet, when the illusion of legitimacy cloaked the act, they did. This is the first thread in our dark tapestry, the terrifying power of situational forces. The Milgram experiment whispers to us that evil is not an invasion. It is a slow seduction, a series of small surrenders, a voice inside saying, "Someone else is responsible. I am just following orders." But let us go deeper into the labyrinth of the self. Carl Jung, the great explorer of the human psyche, spoke of something he called the shadow. Not a monster, not a demon, but the parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge. The anger we swallow, the cruelty we deny, the desires we bury. The shadow is not evil by nature. It is simply what we exile. But here is the danger. What we exile does not disappear. It gathers strength in the dark. Think of it like a neglected cellar. Lock the door long enough, and whatever lives down there begins to scratch at the wood. And one day, when we are tired, or angry or afraid, the lock breaks. The shadow surges up, not as a stranger, but as us, wearing our face. This is why the kindest people sometimes snap. The devoted husband, who, after years of swallowing his rage, erupts in violence. The compassionate nurse, who, under exhaustion and despair, harms a patient. These are not sudden transformations. They are the shadow breaking its chains. And so, we arrive at the heart of our question. How does a good person do terrible things and still believe they are good? The answer lies in a psychological sleight of hand called moral dissonance. The mind cannot bear contradiction. It will always choose the lie that soothes over the truth that burns. So, when our actions clash with our self-image, the mind bends reality to fit. A soldier dehumanizes the enemy, calls them animals, so killing feels like duty, not murder. A corrupt executive tells herself, everyone does it, so theft becomes strategy. A bully convinces himself his victim deserves it, so cruelty feels like justice. This is not an excuse. It is a warning. Because the most dangerous evil is the kind that does not know its name, the kind that dresses itself in duty, in necessity, in righteousness, the kind that lets ordinary people like us, sleep soundly after doing unspeakable things. So where does this leave us? In a world where darkness is not an exception, but a possibility. A world where the real question is not, could I become evil? But what will I do to make sure I don't? The answer lies in vigilance, in questioning authority, even when it wears a white coat, in facing our shadows before they face us, in refusing the easy lies that let us hurt others and still call ourselves good. Because the mirror is always there, and the reflection that stares back is only as dark as we allow it to be.